What is going on? DiamondRyce here, coming at you with another video. And today we have here my personal recommended Windows programs. Now, these programs are meant for people who have made a clean install PC, made a custom PC, maybe they recently reinstalled Windows, and for your laptops and other things like that. So, for one thing, the first thing you want to go to is, and the URL is called Ninite. Now, this site is basically, like it says in its quote, install and updates all your programs all at once. This is basically an easy way to kind of gets kickstarted your way to some of the programs that you would want to install, especially when you're wanting to when you want to use your PC. So, as it says, pick the apps you want. So what I normally do is I start from the left and I go on to the right. So that's what we're gonna do. We go left to right, and then down and up as well. So under web browsers, obviously since I'm running Chrome is my personal favorite web browser. I don't use Opera as much, and Firefox is my other personal alternative if Chrome doesn't work on a particular website, or if maybe my ad block on Chrome does. Actually kind of messes up on certain sites as well. So in my opinion, I would use both. Each have their pros and cons. I don't use one or the other as much, and RAM usage is not a problem because I have 16 gigs of RAM. So Chrome would probably eat up as much as I want to. So good enough for me. Utilities, I don't use. I used to use TeamViewer, not as much anymore. Image burn. Image burn is still very useful if you want to make a virtual ISO of any of your, let's say your old games. I have Gears of War and some of the older games that were from or basically physical disk, and I made them into a virtual disk, an ISO file that allows me to pretty much play the game without having a physical disc installed or having a CD drive, because CD drives are pretty much being inexistent nowadays. So I like it. It's still a personal favorite. I don't need to install it as much nowadays, but it's still very useful. As an example, TerraCopy. TerraCopy is one of my other personal ones that I used to use. It basically is a copy and file system. It pretty much allows you to add more files and pretty much copy them to a particular directory, but you can also stack and queue up more particular files per copying and such. So it's very useful. Not really much. That's not really much I can say about it. It's one of the ones I use, so that's all. Under the other utilities, I would use directory stat. So basically, what this does is it pretty much creates a tree of a individual hard drive and shows which one has the most space taking up your hard drive, your SSDs or something. Because obviously in SSDs, space is still very crucial. I'm still running a 128 gigabyte SSD as my primary OS, and this is pretty much how my thing stacks up hardware wise. Each one of these squares and the squares are pretty much an individual file per se on the actual drive. Now, obviously, the ones on the back or the ones on the side here, these are the ones that are actually really big and causes maybe an issue for some people, maybe not. It depends on what actually usually happens most of the time. Mine, for example, is hibernation file and page file, which normal Windows files that are being made. And you can delete them, but they'll just be remade eventually, so it will probably be expanded as however much you want to. You can set these files to a certain extent if you want to, but I just leave it at its own. I leave it at the default settings and such. Okay, so under messaging, under categories, I don't use any of these except for Skype. Skype is kind of the rare occasion when I do need to use it. There's not really much you can do about it. There is a privacy issue with it. Some people don't like using it anymore. I use another program, which I'll talk about later on. But that's pretty much it. Everything else I don't really use, so I'll leave it unchecked mark in my opinion. Now, for extraction of zip files or anything else, these three are obviously the most popular ones to use. I used to use WinRAR, the trial version at least, because no one wants to buy WinRAR. Anyways, that one's one of my the ones I used to use a lot. But nowadays I use 7-zip and pzip. If pzip doesn't work on me, 7-zip will definitely work for most files. It's definitely one of my useful ones at least. So, and as an example of mine, I would check those two. And under media, unless you have an iPhone, don't use iTunes. It's not my personal favorite anymore. It's still slow on Windows and really crappy, so don't use it. VLC is definitely very good as a media player. It's definitely one of my favorites to use. I don't use it current. I actually have it installed. I still have it installed if my main primary media player doesn't work. But I'll get to that into another video because what I personally use is Media Player Classic, which is but in conjunction with a project called the Smooth Video Project, or SVP. Now this SVP pretty much makes a frame rate conversion, or it basically makes the video seem like it's 60 FPS. It basically it emulates the 60 FPS on videos that are not 60 FPS, and it actually does it really well. And personally, that's one of my favorite things with Media Player Classic, which only works on Media Player Classic and some other ones. VLC is not supported on this one, but that's for another video though. That's why. So I'll leave that as another guide tutorial, whatever I like to call it. Foobar is my primary music. Basically, my primary music streaming, or just tracks that I have on my hard drives. Definitely one of my favorite music players to use. I use it for my stream because I can use it to basically any offline music will be nice to show off to play and such. And then I use another program that allows it to basically grab that as a music ticker and then show it off on my stream. But that's definitely one of my favorites. Very useful. Like it. My thing. Winamp I know is good as well, but I don't use it as much, so I'm not gonna recommend it as my thing. Audacity is pretty much an audio editing software. It's very useful. It's freeware. It's very, very useful. I used to make a lot of my recordings on it. I'm not currently using it right now because I'm actually using OBS. OBS is a recording software, is very useful for its audio and visual recording. But if you're just making like a voiceover or commentary, you can definitely use Audacity. Audacity is very much useful. Now, for codecs, I used to use K-Lite, but I recently found out that they've been selling its data and privacy data to certain other companies. I mean, who else doesn't do that? But they're the ones I used to use, but I don't use it as much now. So CCP, which is basically another set of decoders codecs, and they're pretty much the ones I use. Very useful, very upgradable, and things. I like it. Spotify I don't use currently because I have Google Play Music, so that's my personal music player, but Spotify is still useful for finding new music tracks and things such like that. So I still use it. I still don't use it, but I still have it installed on my hard drive because I know for sure I'll use it. Handbrake. Handbrake is definitely another useful software. Handbrake is pretty much useful for me is if I record some videos using Shadowplay, which I'm not using right now, but if I use Shadowplay or whatever NVIDIA calls it in the new NVIDIA experience thing, what do you call it? Whatever it's called, I'll always call it Shadowplay. It basically fixes that particular format, and it basically makes like a constant frame rate or bit rate depending on what usually the problem is. Most of those videos inside of Adobe Premiere, if I bought it straight through Shadowplay, do not record. They don't actually they run out of sync in the video when you run it, so it's hard to pretty much do anything like that. So that's my personal one. I mostly install it. It's not one of my favorites when I don't install it, and then when I do need it, I end up installing it regardless. So I keep it installed on my computer as well. Runtimes, if you don't use any particular runtimes, like if you're not like a Java developer or anything, or maybe use like Netflix or some other things, most of these are not very useful. The only thing I think will be useful is .NET, but unless you do really need it, I think that's the only one recommended that you would want to do. Under developer tools, you don't really need any of these unless you're actually a developer. So JDK will probably be the only thing you'll be useful for, and also Notepad++. Definitely one of my useful notepads. It's definitely it's very good text editor, but it also pretty much allows other formats between Java files, C files, C#, a lot of different programming languages files. So all those source files can be read by Notepad++. It's good. I like it. My personal one. Under imaging, I don't use any of these. The only ones I use I use most of them except I don't use most of them except for GIMP and ShareX. Those two are my personal favorites. GIMP is basically a poor man's version of Photoshop, and since I use Photoshop, I don't need GIMP right now, but I know for sure that once I'm out of school and such, and if I need to use like another set of programs, GIMP is definitely something will be good for as an open source version of Adobe Photoshop. It's not the same. You're gonna have some differences, but it's still very useful. ShareX is my screenshotting software. So basically, ShareX is basically so it's basically a software. It's pretty much it allows me to basically grab a capturing software, and it allows me to pretty much capture what I need to capture a window, a screen, and such. If I capture for example this, and then it shows up, I have a show up screen where I can actually put some images. I can save it. I can do some editing, things like that. So it's very very useful in my opinion. Under documents, I don't use any of these except for Foxit Reader. Foxit Reader is my PDF reader. It's still my current one. They've been having what it seems like I thought would be adware, but and other things, but I haven't figured out exactly what it is. So the only thing I would actually use is actually Foxit Reader. That's my personal favorite, at least. Under the other ones, LibreOffice is good, especially if you don't have Microsoft Office. It's definitely the most open source version of it as well. I did use Sumatra PDF at one point in time, but I don't use it currently, so I can't really talk about any of those other ones. Microsoft Security Essentials is still there for the people that are under Windows 10 and below, but obviously you would want to change it. I use, in my personal opinion, is Malwarebytes and Advance. But since I have Windows Defender and I use ad blocking software, I just use Malwarebytes, it's pretty much that's my trio of things for installation, especially for a PC. But if you really do need an antivirus, I would make it through Avast. I heard Avira is good too, but those are the two I would probably pick. AVG I used to use, but it's been it's very slow and it's not really much of dependence. It's not really good anymore, pretty much. That's all I'm going to say. Nothing under file sharing. I don't use any of that. Under online storage, if you do use some of your storage, like Dropbox or Google Drive, obviously you can find it here. My personal opinion between those two particular ones, I would obviously use Google Drive because I have Android phones, I have Android tablets, I have a lot of different devices, and they're always all synced up to my Google account, so it's very useful. I like it, and it's pretty much like how I do it for this. Obviously, YouTube is connected to it as well, so all of it is connected. I like it. It's one of my favorites. I don't use I don't use the actual Windows program though, because I do everything online on the web browser. So your choice. You can do it as well. Under other, I heard Evernote's good. You can sync it amongst pretty much like anywhere. You can sync it to pretty much all devices, all tablets, all different computers. So I can see it being a good thing. It's not a part of my workflow though, so I won't use it. You can use Steam. Steam can be installed here as well. It only installs to obviously to the default place, which would be your program files, x86, if you're running a 64-bit version of Windows, which you should be nowadays. So that's where it would be installed to. You can install it into a different hard drive, but I'll leave that to another video because that's a quick tutorial in itself, but I won't be able to do it in this one. So this one's talking about recommended programs, so that's what I'm going to do here. Under anything else, KeePass is my password manager. It's offline. It's off pretty much anything. You don't have to depend on any like website or server or anything. It's offline. You add anything to it. It's pretty much a good software for your password manager, especially if you have so many different websites and such that you need to keep track of the passwords. And obviously you don't want the same password per website and such. So I like it. Good one. I like. It's my personal one. LastPass I heard was good too, but I wouldn't use it. So. Or I don't use it personally, so you can try it out. You can do some other things like that. Everything is basically it's basically searching for your own stuff on basically on your hard drives everywhere. So basically you put in a couple words or you put in whatever you need to do and pretty much you can find it easily. So if I put in, let's say, I don't know, Fallout as an example, pretty much it'll bring out everything right now that would actually have the word as Fallout. So I have a bunch of other things. It will find each one. It will say which name under Fallout, and it'll list it all here. Now, obviously, you can do it where you can only view, or you can actually search for like actually everything, audio, compressed documents, everything. These options are very good for what you wanted to do and such. So I like it. Okay, so now that Night's done, that's all gone, there are a couple other softwares I would install, and one of those is Discord. Now, Discord pretty much replaces Skype for me. It's basically much it's a voice over IP, but it's also a very good chat and pretty much community type kind of thing that you can do. Now you can make your own server, you can make your own things, you can do like voice channels, you can do text channels. Those are like the two primary ones, and you can also join some other groups. So I have a couple other groups here on the side. Each one has its own particular sections of text channels and voice channels, and you can obviously do whatever you like, or I wouldn't say whatever you like in them, but you can join these. You can pretty much chat with other people. Much easier to do than what you would have done with Skype. And this is pretty much what it replaces it. That's my personal favorite right now. Obviously, it's put barren on my own channel, but I don't personally use it as much yet. So obviously, when I play with either my friends or anything, or if I'm gaming and I need to like hook up with some other players for like a team and such, for like let's say Gears of War as an example, much easier to do here than it would just be like on Skype or something like that. But obviously, your choice. You could be different. That's my personal opinion. So I do have some other software, and these other softwares, for cleaning at least, is CC Cleaner and Advanced System Care. Now these two are basically PC cleaners to the extent that you don't want to run both of them at the same time. You want to run one or the other first. Now they basically do the same thing. They clean up some old files. They clean up like internet caches, histories. They can do a lot of things. Just make sure you only run one at a time, because if you run both, they could have some complications, and then you'll end up with pretty much a bad setup and could cause some problems on your PC. So, which may cause you to reinstall Windows again, and then you have to go through this entirety of video all again just to find your recommended programs. But anyways, obviously you can have Analyze, or you can run the cleaner automatically. The default checks are pretty much the ones I would use most of the time. You can clean out the cookies, you can clean out the sessions of web browsers, you can do a lot of other things. The registry, there's some other things that could be like obsolete or anything that could be found that can be deleted, and CC Cleaner will do that too. Advanced System Care does the same exact thing as what CC Cleaner does, just in a more like UI-based kind of thing. I personally like both of them. I don't run them both at the same time, like I said, but they're very both useful, but they do basically the same exact thing. So your choice as to which one you would do. I just run both. I just have both of them because I run both of them most of the time, and it does work for certain cases and such. Under Tools of CC Cleaner, which it crashed. Okay. No, it didn't crash. Okay, well, under CC Cleaner, basically, you can uninstall programs under the Tools section. So you can install any program that you want from the computer without having any major issues for uninstalling. And you can also just remove some other stuff as well. So that's basically what I use for CC Cleaner. Advanced System Care, like I said, will do the same thing. So those are my personal ones. What else do I have? Under my notepad, what else? Oh, yeah. So, basically, if you have a custom PC and you let's say you have some hardware you need to look at and you need to make sure that everything's right, one of them is MSI Afterburner, GPU-Z, CPU-Z, and hardware info. Now, all of these softwares pretty much will allow you to monitor basically CPUs and temperatures, hard drive temperatures, anything that you want per se, and make sure that your programs are actually like all your components of it, like let's say your custom PC or pre-built itself. Make sure everything's running. Make sure it's actually running the right sets of temperatures, the core clock, speeds, anything like that. So these ones are pretty much my personal favorites. These are the ones I use to monitor my stuff, especially when I do some benchmarks on my PC as well. So obviously, these on here on the left side are my info ones. So here, the top one here is a customized version of CPU-Z, so it's pretty much a good one. You could just use the default one. I just have the ROG Republic Gamers one because I used to run a Asus, or I am running an Asus motherboard, so that's why I put it on that one. MSI Afterburner was just basically a custom skin. This will be a different skin per se when you first install the program, but this is how you do it. You have here memory clock, core clock, and the temperature limits and such. You want to play around with these, but you want to make sure you do it in like increment, like plus 10 increments or something. Something do very minimal. Make sure that you don't like screw up your overclocking. You don't want to you basically don't want to have your temperatures running off the roof, and that's what I have hardware monitor for. So that's my personal favorite to monitoring temperatures and things. Make sure that everything is running fine. Make sure that the temperatures are right, voltages are right, and things like that. There is one more software I missed, and that was actually Hardware Info 64. Now this one just kind of collaborates and mixes all these together. I use this just to find like information, like a summary of my information from stuff like all my USB devices, from my graphics to my CPUs, and pretty much my hard drives, what they're running at, what my memory is running at. It's very, very useful. It kind of pretty much puts all these other programs together, if you want to put it that way, into one of them. But I use all of them for different purposes and things, so it's obviously a good thing. It's my personal one. I like it. That's how I use it. And I have here two more different programs. I have here Flux, which is basically how would I put this? It basically will save your screen. It will basically save your eyes when the nighttime comes around. So basically, during the nighttime, when maybe you're on the late hours on your PC and such, and let's say you need to keep playing, or you need to either you keep playing, or you need to, you're reading something for like homework or whatever you do on your PC at night, late at night. This will basically save your eyes. It will tint the monitor screen to a different color, basically. So what it does is it pretty much takes out all the whites of a monitor and pretty much just replaces it with like a yellow, pretty much like a yellow tintish kind of color, pretty much, and it brings it across the monitor. It's easier and safer on your eyes. It will basically help you fall asleep easier, especially on your mobile devices, because they have another version of it on mobile devices, but obviously this is for the PC, so you can do it here as well. It's very useful. I like it, and that's pretty much it for that one. And then finally, I have one more software, which is called Crystal Disk Info. Crystal Disk Info is pretty much a hard drive and SSD like monitoring system. It pretty much monitors how good is your hard drive, like temperature wise, how good is it for like health status and things. It's very, very useful. It shows you pretty much like your firmware, serial numbers, what transfer rate, like SATA mode or M.2 or whatever if you have some newer drives. It's a good software. It's honestly one of my favorites to monitoring software for your hard drives. It's good. It's to make sure that, let's say you buy like a used hard drive, which one of my hard drives is, and it shows you how many times has it been powered on and how many times it's been on for that duration. So as an example, on this drive, I turned this hard drive on 177 times. And then out of those 177 times, it's been on for 24 hours, or basically 24,000 hours. So it's been there a long time already, but it's still good because of the fact that it hasn't been powered on that much. Compared to my other drive, which is this one. This has 1,475 over 11,000 hours. So it's about the same ratio, but you have to make sure that each one's right. So, and that's it for the video. Honestly, that's my recommended programs. If you want more programs, or if you want more help on these installations of some of these programs, hit me up on Twitter at DiamondRyce, or you can leave a comment down below. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe. You know the deal. I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.